NEAT, the most important thing you haven't heard of. Unless, of course, you watched the last lecture in which I started to mention it, in which we called it non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And if I could pick a lecture to watch and really try and learn about, it'd be this one to start off with, because I think it's so important. And actually, you may have started to become aware of this concept even without knowing it. So there's been a lot of talk about activity trackers, Fitbits, Jawbones, Mi Bands, looking to get people to track their activity on a daily basis. And it was really, really important. And it's basically any calories you burn that's not planned exercise. And that just doesn't have to be walking. It's standing, it's fidgeting, it's holding your posture, it's speaking, it's everything you do. So this can be anything from carrying bags to the car, as I said, to be sat on the sofa, twitching your feet. And as we saw in that last lecture, this has a huge part to play when it comes to the calories out of your calories in, calories out equation. And here's just a very quick table of some of the calories that we burn through certain activities. So at rest, we burn roughly 77 calories an hour, and sitting motionless is only 80. However, if we compare 38 calories per hour difference between sitting and sitting while fidgeting. So as we can see, sitting motionless is 80 calories an hour, while sitting while fidgeting is 118 calories an hour. So if you are a desk worker, through a work day, that could be a difference of 300 calories difference between two people of exactly the same weight, doing exactly the same exercise, doing everything exactly the same throughout the day, apart from one fidgets more than the other, and it's 300 calories, which is over a Mars bar per day. Then it starts to get really big when we start looking at things like 60 calories per hour difference between standing motionless and standing while fidgeting. And again, if we extrapolate that over the course of a work day, that's 480 calories. And then if you actually take that even further and start to think about the person that walks a lot during their working day, say they're walking at 2 miles per hour, that's burning 235 calories per hour. So we think of things like our postmen, our milkmen, people who are going out and about. There's a good chance that they're burning far more calories over the course of a day, up to 600, 700, 800 calories more a day than somebody of the same weight doing a job that's basically resting, sitting at a desk. So we can see it's a hugely important factor when it comes to calories out. And of course, the more calories we burn, the more calories we can consume to maintain our weight. And it is starting to get more focused now, but for a long time, we often focused our attention and efforts on burning calories in 1 hour every 2 to 3 days, and that's in our planned exercise sessions. And whilst they are vitally important for weight loss maintenance, for health, for your joints, for your mobility, for your strength, for feeling better, for having more energy, all those good things, actually when it comes to calories out, energy expenditure, we often forget about the huge impact that the remaining 23 hours a day can have, and this is where NEAT, our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, has a huge part to play. And it's actually the most adaptable and variable part of our energy expenditure. As we said, most people, for their height and weight, will have a relatively similar BMR. However, their NEAT levels can vary massively. As we said, compare that person who's a desk worker to somebody who's a manual labourer. We know that they're going to burn far more calories doing active jobs. And it's also the most adaptable. And as I'll mention in a second, it's actually, you may have experienced this when dieting. And if you've ever dieted for quite a long period of time and start to feel sluggish and lethargic and like you didn't want to get out of bed, you didn't want to exercise, you didn't want to walk, you wanted to sit down, that is your body reducing its NEAT levels because it wants to save calories. And then we have the opposite side of the equation, some of those lucky people where when they were overfed in this experiment, they were overfed by roughly 1,000 calories a day, and some people simply just fidgeted more, they moved more, and that expended, I should say, an extra 800 calories a day. So can you imagine that somebody that over the course of weeks is getting overfed 1,000 calories a day, which is about a McDonald's, on top of their normal diet, and they basically just fidgeted around more and maintained most of their weight, so didn't gain any weight, as opposed to other individuals who pretty much gained all of that weight. So if you've ever known someone who's kind of stick thin, can eat what they want, they're really hyper, these are the people with really high NEAT levels. And as I just said a second ago, when we diet, our body wants to lower expenditure. It doesn't know that we want to look good in a swimsuit or have more confidence or have more energy with the kids. Its only goal is survival, and it'll often protect against a calorie deficit. One of the best ways that your body protects against us being in a calorie deficit is to lower NEAT levels. Because think about it. If we were always in a calorie deficit and always losing weight, then very quickly we'd die, which obviously for the human race isn't a good thing. So our body's way of stopping us from doing that is by lowering our NEAT levels. And as we're going to see in a second, that can often be counterproductive when it comes to our weight loss efforts, which obviously means less standing, less walking, less talking. And I'm just going to bring up a point here actually. It's actually the major difference between the elderly and the young, they found, when it comes to energy expenditure. So often as we get older, people find it harder to lose weight. They think it's to do with their metabolism slowing down. And while we do lose some muscle, which does slightly impact our BMR, remember that energy required just to keep us alive, the main difference between the elderly and the young was a difference in our NEAT levels. And so as we can see here, the white bars are the young and the black bars are the elderly. We can see that the young spend far more time standing and less time sitting than the elderly. And then we look at the average walk times in the top bar on the right hand side where that black line is. You can see that the young on average walk nearly 500 minutes per day, as opposed to kind of in the high 300s for the elderly. And that's also represented in the distance walked, with the average for the young people within the study walking over 8 miles per day, where the elderly were down at 6. So again, we know that as we age, we start to lower our NEAT levels, and this is very much subconsciously. We sit more, we walk less. So if you want to try and have one of the easiest ways you can to maintain weight loss or maintain a lower weight is to get out and be more active. That was just a little side note. And so this is a little study that looked into how weight regain is related to decreases in non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So we said right at the start, most of us don't have a weight loss problem. We have a weight loss maintenance problem. It's keeping the weight off and not regaining it. And so Wang et al. In 2008, so et al. Just means, and colleagues took 34 overweight postmenopausal women. So they'd gone through the menopause. They did 20 weeks of a calorie deficit, so it was roughly 2,800 calories a week, and then they followed up after 12 months. And it was a high intensity walking program or a low intensity walking program. And then there was a third group that just did diet only. So 3 groups: high intensity walking, low intensity walking, diet only. And they had tracked their activity outside of the gym. And basically they put them through this diet, and after they lost 30 pounds, the women lowered their activity by an average of 130 to 180 calories a day relative to their changes in body weight. So as we lose weight, we tend to obviously have a lower BMR. As I said before, the bigger we are, the bigger our BMR is, because there's more of you, there's more body to maintain. However, these women, once they'd lost 30 pounds, actually on top of what the calories out that we'd expect to see lower, they also lowered their NEAT by 130 to 180 calories a day, which again means we now need even less calories to maintain that body weight. And the individuals that tended to lower their NEAT the most tended to gain the most weight back. So this is where this idea of tracking our steps, staying active outside the gym becomes super, super important to keeping weight off. And this is where exercise can be also great in helping us keep our weight off. And as I've just alluded to there, higher daily steps were associated with lower rates of weight regain. So the more active you can be outside of the gym, the greater chance you've got of keeping your weight off, because we keep our calorie output higher. And we've also seen people who actually compensate after their exercise. So some people, and as it says there, not all, lower their NEAT levels after an exercise session. So their body expends calories during the exercise. And as we said before, it doesn't like this. It wants to stay alive. It wants to keep fat stores as high as it can. So what it does is it compensates by reducing your activity outside of the gym. So This was a study done in 2012, and again it took 34 women through a brisk walking plan. Some of the women increased their activity or their non-exercise activity, so the amount of walking they did during the day, with an exercise program. However, others reduced it. So just to simply clarify that, of the 34 women, when some of them were told to exercise, they do their exercise program, which is their brisk walking, and they would naturally increase their activity as well. They do more walking to the shops, they do more standing, they do more gardening, whatever it may be. Whereas others, once they started on the exercise program, trying to burn more calories, their body didn't like it and they tried to reduce their NEAT levels. They actually moved less. We can see this here in this graph. So let me break it down. In the red, we've got the group that actually increased their activity with the introduction of exercise, of this brisk walking program. However, in the black, we've got people who reduced it. So on the left-hand side, we've got before the trial started, before the women started walking. And we can see the red group, the guys and girls who actually increased their activity, were burning on average 2,282 calories a day, and the women in black were burning 2,349. Now, at the end of the 12-week trial, look what happened. In the red group, the group that increased their activity expenditure, on training days, they were now burning 2,556 calories. So they didn't compensate when it came to exercise. They still burnt more calories. However, look at the group next to it, the group in black, 2,254 calories. And this is on training days, actual training days. So let's think about this clearly. These women in the black were on average, before doing any exercise, using 2,349 calories per day. They started doing an exercise program, and at the end of those 12 weeks, on the days where they'd been out and walked for their exercise program, they burnt actually less calories than they burnt before they'd even started the training program. So if we think about our calories in, calories out model, these women are now doing an exercise program. They would expect to lose weight, however, they are burning less calories. Therefore, they're not only going to not lose weight, they may actually potentially gain weight because they've compensated by doing less in those other 23 hours of the day. And it actually got worse for these women. So on non-training days, when the women weren't instructed to go out and walk, the group that increased their activity, as we can see, actually still increased it above baseline, 2,443 calories. So even on days when they were not instructed to go out and walk, they still got more exercise activity in. However, the ladies in black, once again, the ladies that lowered their activity, lowered it even further. And now it's only down at 2,080 calories per day. So they're seeing nearly a reduction in 300 calories per day energy expenditure than they did before they started the trial, because their body is trying to compensate. It wants to burn less calories. It wants to protect its body's fat stores. So some of us will be compensators, some of us won't be compensators. And very quickly, this is just breaking it down for you. So you can see this is the calories expended from activity, and we can see the group that lowered their activity actually went from 562 before the trial. Then after the trial, they went down to 441 on training days and 238, almost half their activity they did on non-training days at the end of the trial. So we've got to be very wary of this, and think if we've ever done this before. If we go to the gym and we train really hard, maybe we burn 200, 300, 400 calories. But then if we go home and we spend the rest of the day sitting more, doing less, just generally being lethargic, then actually our overall calorie output may be the same or even lower. And that actually makes us worse off when it comes to our chances of losing weight. So it's super important that we keep an eye on activity outside of the exercise session. So not only are we working hard during the sessions, but we're monitoring our steps and our activity outside of it. So great ways of doing this, as I said, Steps app on your phone, Fitbits, Jawbones, Mi Bands, all very cheap and easy ways of tracking your activity. Because if we see that your activity starts to slow or starts to lower, then we know your body's trying to compensate, and we may have to try and actively get a few more steps in. Because as I said, lots of this is very subconscious. But it is individual. It's not going to happen to everyone. Some people, you may be the lucky ones that tend to increase your activity, others won't. But It does seem that older women tend to be more susceptible to this reduction in NEAT than the younger males. So how many steps a day should we be looking for if that's a good kind of barometer for our NEAT? There is this rule out there, it's 10,000 steps for health. However, it doesn't have to be 10,000 steps. It can be less. Just what I'd like you to do to start off with is start tracking your steps and actually seeing where you're on. Some people may be down as low as 2,000. Hey, that's where you're at. But remember, we don't have to be perfect to lose weight. We simply have to be better. So then we can start tracking our steps. We can start trying to increase that week on week with a good plan with your coach, with your trainer. And that's just a nice, easy way of burning extra calories. Because if you can get an extra 5,000 steps in a day, that might be the same as 150, 200, 250 calories, which is almost, for some people, like going out and doing a 2, 3, 4K run. Now, there's a good chance that you're not going to go to do a 2, 3, 4K run every week, or every day, I should say, but you will get out and just be that little bit more active. And we can do this simply by trying to identify where you're at and increase it incrementally. So things like walking to work, parking further away from the supermarket, the cinema, wherever it is you're going to, taking breaks to get up from the desk and moving around the office. Remember what we said before, that difference between standing at your desk or sitting, that difference between walking and sitting. So every hour, if you can get up, go to get a drink from the water fountain, have a little stretch of the legs. Not only will it help your cognition, but it will also help with your weight loss. Walking meetings, quite popular now in America. Walking during your lunch break, getting out for half an hour, 20 minutes, walking around the building if must. And my only caveat with this is don't take them as gospel in terms of the calories they expend. So some of these Fitbits, people that move their arms around quite a lot, I've had window cleaners, I've had carpet fitters, people like that who, because they're moving their hands a lot all day, it tells them they've burnt a ridiculous number of calories. Don't pay too much attention to that. Just use it as a simple way of tracking the number of steps you're getting. And as I said, try and incrementally increase it over time, because it's so important when it comes to those calories out. And remember, the more calories we expend through NEAT, the higher we can keep our food when dieting. Think back to our example before. If I'm someone who's sedentary, who doesn't move around a lot at work, who doesn't really exercise too much, then my calories to maintain my weight are going to be really low. And the example we gave was 1,600 to 1,800 calories, which means if we want to diet, we're going to have to go lower than that, maybe a lot lower. However, for the person who's already very active and already exercising, they might need 2,500 calories a day to maintain their weight. Therefore, we can diet them on 2,200, 2,000 calories. So the higher we can keep your NEAT, the higher we can keep your food intake. And as I alluded to with the treadmill analogy, you might not want to go and exercise 7 days a week. It's psychologically and physiologically taxing. However, you can get out more, you can walk, you can take the dog, you can see the grandkids, you can go and play football, you can go and play squash. You can generally just get out, do that little bit more, and it will help you not only burn calories, but it might help you recover with your hard training. And as we said before, monitoring NEAT levels during dieting can play a key role in helping you to promote and sustain weight loss. So if you haven't, Steps apps on your phone, or I'd recommend the Mi Band. They're roughly 25 to 30 pounds, but they last for a long, long time, and they're really good at just telling you where your steps are at. So, quite a lot of information to take in there. So if you need to, go back over it, watch this lecture again, because as I said, the idea of NEAT, the activity, the energy that we spend outside of the gym is vitally, vitally important.